Hello there. Thank you for joining me for this week's edition of Telile 24/7. I'm your host, Adam Cook. On this week's show, I have two feature interviews for you. I'll talk to Richmond PC MLA Trevor Boudreau and also catch up with the latest candidate for the Nova Scotia Liberal leadership, Zach Churchill. We'll also check in later on with the Strait-Richmond Housing Matters Coalition and see how they're trying to secure provincial and municipal funding for a new staff position that would help them further their work in the community. But we begin with an update on an issue that came out of the Committee of the Whole meeting for Richmond Municipal Council. It concerns charging stations for electric vehicles. We already have some in Richmond County, and Municipal Council would like to have 3 more installed at Point Michaud Beach, La Picasse in Petit de Gras, and at the Richmond Arena in Louisdale. But they're also trying to figure out whether there can be an additional charging station set up in Arishat. Here's that conversation from Richmond's Committee of the Whole meeting right now.
We did not include Arishat at that time because we understood there was already a charging station located there. However, we have since found out it's private. Now, even since then again, we also, staff had been proceeding with looking at assessing those other locations. And so far, I think what they have found out is that they would need like written response and essentially permission from properties that are not owned by us in order to proceed, even to respond to the RFP from the Clean Foundation to have those funds awarded to the county to get those stations installed. So we haven't received responses from La Picasse or DNR, which would be for Point Michaud Beach. So we have received a memo from our Public Works Director, Chris, with a recommendation to push this to our strategic planning discussions. He's citing the tight timelines. The deadline is March 18th, I think, for the Clean Foundation RFP. And also we would need to be identifying where the budgetary resources would come to match those dollars if we were successful with the Clean Foundation RFP. And also the fact that these stations are not currently on our 5-year plan. So I guess I'm just seeking some instruction from council on how they would like staff to move forward or not. Do we want to include Arishat as a location? And, if so, would we be proceeding with the RFP, or would we want to push this to our strategic planning and add it to our 5-year plan at that time? So, and to budget.
Yeah, so I tend to agree with Chris. It would be nice to, move it to our, our strategic 5-year plan. At the same time, I think if we're going to look at putting a site in Arishat, what better place than right at the municipality, or, just below with that, at that little parking inlet that we made. It might be a location. I mean, we would have to check obviously with, with the higher ups to see if that location works for them for a station. But again, we own the property, so what better spot? And it's on the main street in Arishat. So if somebody wanted to go eat, they have options. If somebody wanted to just go for a walk down to the waterfront, they have options as well. So
I think I'm getting from that, though, that you think maybe we should kind of push this to budget and 5-year plan, strategic planning discussion.
I do. I believe it. I believe Arishat's a great location, and that's one that we could choose because we own the property. But I think we have to put a lot of thought and work into it to make sure that we get it right. So I would like to push it to the for budget deliberations and our strategic planning.
Yeah, I think if there is any opportunity, whether or not we're able to get through with all of what we wanted, I would be more in favor or more inclined to try and do what we can, where it's a very good opportunity from the government to get, substantial amount of funding so as to cut the costs for the municipal taxpayers. I assume there will be some coming in the future as well. I mean, this is gonna happen more than once, but I think we should take advantage of what we can now, but maybe also look at it for the future if there are some areas we can't hit with the first round.
So I guess part of the issue, right, is that it would take quite a bit of time, or I guess maybe more time than we originally anticipated to get that documented permission to access, install, and operate the charging infrastructure on somebody else's land, which would kind of narrow down our locations to the Louisdale Arena if we were going to probably want to meet the timeline. For this round, anyway, to your point, Councillor Sampson, I feel like, let's continue to work on it. But would something like that work?
I think if there are ones that we're able to proceed with, I think we'd be better to do some rather than none. Ideally, I mean, we'd like to see those 3 or 4 spots all done, but if we're not able to, I think it may be in our best interest to proceed with what we can at this point in time and hope for another funding source in the future.
I would tend to think similar to Councillor Sampson in terms of, Arishat and the rink are both municipally owned properties, so we don't need permissions for those. I think the funding is lovely. I do think there'll be more to come, but that doesn't, I don't suspect applying for one group of funding is going to exclude us from another group of funding. I certainly take Chris's point in terms of, it's not on our capital plan, blah, 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 but we've talked about this previously, like that things sometimes creep into your capital plan unannounced, and we have that flexibility. It's not a huge amount of money. It's not like our capital plan is hurting, our capital fund is hurting, so there's money there for it. And I think that, the world has changed quickly, is changing quickly, and we need to move with it. I mean, I also recognize for Chris's briefing note, that there's potentially he can't get it done by the March 18th deadline. And that's not a him problem. That's just a whole getting the information that he needs to prepare it. And then we need to also approve it, right? So there are a whole bunch of timeline pieces there that I think are concerning. So I guess all of that long-windedness is to say, I would love to see us push hard to try to get an application put forward for Arishat and the rink, if our portion of it seems reasonable, and then continue to think about what other locations might be suitable through the strategic planning process, and then incorporate those into the budget.
I got a lot of feedback from our last meeting, and some of it was location. One of it said, who wants to park at a Richmond arena and wait 45 minutes or an hour in the middle of nowhere, kind of thing, and then who wants to park at Point Michaud Beach or drive to Point Michaud Beach in the middle of winter when you can barely drive because of the roads. So again, I know the funding is there now, but I don't believe the funding is going anywhere. If the province and everybody else is moving forward, and they're definitely going to be pushing the funding, I would just hate for us to spend, our money and put it in a location that really isn't going to benefit us in any way. So if we were looking to push one that will benefit us, then I would say definitely the one right at the municipality site itself is probably
yeah, I think I know what Councillor Digdon is referring to, but I think the point was maybe missed by people that these were locations where people would be spending considerable amount of time at the arena. Oftentimes people may be there for several hours, or the beach, and even in the winter, although I know there's a lot of people walk down there, but these aren't the type of chargers that I don't believe people would be going as much specifically just in the middle of a trip. These are, the mid-grade ones. So they're more something people plan around when they're planning to spend a considerable amount of time somewhere anyway. If we were looking at the rapid chargers, then having them in maybe slightly more out of the way locations wouldn't probably make as much sense. But considering the type we're looking at, I think it does.
Timing is against us right now. We've actually spoken to an engineer, and he's working on the Richmond Arena one right now. If we decided that we thought maybe Arishat might be a great option, we probably still wouldn't have time for that one either. The work's already underway for the arena, so once we get that information, the engineering costs were minimal, so we decided to go ahead with that plan anyway. The Point Michaud and the Picasso one was definitely out of the question. There would just be no way that we could get those any kind of numbers completed for the application deadline. So right now we're essentially just working on the arena one. But absolutely, if council wanted to pursue any others, like I've heard it mentioned a couple of times, it's very likely that there will be more funding going out, and maybe council might consider one of the more faster chargers, over with respect to a 5-year plan, and maybe some of the level 2 chargers for a shorter term plan. Once we get that information from the engineer with respect to fees associated with putting a charge station at the arena, we'll forward that information off to you folks. And if there's an application process that you want us to continue with, we can do it.
Do we want to, instruct staff to continue working on the Richmond Arena location with the intent to submit before the March 18th deadline, or do we want to push the whole thing to budget the capital plan and strat planning? Councillor Digdon?
Yeah, I would definitely say we keep allowing staff to continue. It's great that they actually took the initiative, not that they don't always, but that they did take the initiative and get it underway so that we might be able to meet the timeline. So, the saying one is better than none. So yeah, let's start with one and see what kind of numbers they bring back.
The Nova Scotia Legislature resumes sitting later this month, so we thought it would be a good time to catch up with Richmond PC MLA Trevor Boudreau. We'll talk to him about some of the latest developments from his government, and we'll also see what concerns and what optimism he has as COVID-19 regulations get ready to disappear here in Nova Scotia on March 21st. Here's that conversation with Trevor Boudreau right now. What is your sense in terms of what we can expect, not only from what you and your government are looking to bring to the fore, but also just in terms of the general dialogue and the general tone of the session overall? What's your take?
I think you'll probably hear from all parties saying we're all looking forward to getting back to the legislature. It's where important things happen, and certainly this will be our first budget as a PC government coming into full swing. So it's been quite busy for both caucus members and for staff and departments, kind of and looking at how do we make sure we provide the best bang for our buck with the monies we're going to spend to support Nova Scotians. So it's been quite a process, different than a process as a councillor for a town, but nonetheless very, very interesting.
Now, I spoke to your Strait Area Caucus colleague, Greg Morrow, just last week on Telile 24/7, and I didn't want to insinuate that you or he or any of the other local MLAs have Alan McMaster on speed dial, but I would assume that there's been some communication between you and the MLA for Inverness as he prepares his first budget as finance minister. What are some of the priorities you're bringing forward from Richmond to be part of that budget process?
Well, it's probably no secret to you or anybody else in Richmond how important healthcare is to me, being a healthcare provider, and my wife's a healthcare provider, and being involved in the recruitment of physicians and other healthcare providers in the community. I've had long and hopefully fruitful discussions about healthcare in our region, and certainly in Richmond County itself. And when I say healthcare, I do talk about acute and chronic healthcare, but mental health and addictions as well as long-term care. So my focus has been reaching out to each of the ministers that are involved, and as well as the Minister of Finance, our neighbor, and just discussing my priorities and how they relate to those. And certainly there's priorities in other areas too. But I would suggest we ran on a platform of healthcare. My background in health probably equips me with a bit of knowledge that some others might not have. And so I'm hoping that I'm able to be of service that way.
Just wondering if road work factors into that wish list for Richmond as well. And I know that you've been getting some outreach from municipal councillors in different areas. Melanie Sampson in District 3 talking about places like the Langley Lane in Point Tupper and the Evanston Road, and Sean Sampson in District 1 going on a drive along with you in terms of areas of Veterans Memorial Drive that have had some washout from recent rains. And just wondering, are any of these coming to the fore, and are you looking at road conditions overall across the county as well?
Yeah, I would suggest road phone calls on road conditions as one of the top numbers that we get at our office, and certainly I tried to make that a priority early on. So I was able to do drive-arounds with a lot of councillors in the fall and in the winter, and have a discussion about where their priorities are, and also the priorities that I have, and talking to local department people as well, and staff that have some insight on that maybe I don't have. So why is something done a certain way? Why, and it's no secret rural roads have been neglected, I would say, for a long time. And so it's about prioritizing those. So we've got lots of bridges, we've got lots of gravel roads, and we have lots of paved roads in Richmond that need care. And so it's about prioritizing that with all the stakeholders, and understanding that we're not going to get it all solved in the first year, but I've had some very fruitful discussions, and even with the minister as late as Tuesday night, we had a great discussion of some of the priorities that I have, and you've mentioned some of them here, and certainly there are a whole lot more. I can tell you, I appreciate my colleagues in municipal council reaching out, and they all know it doesn't take a letter or a discussion at council for them to do that. I've got an open door with them, so if there's ways that we can work together to improve roads, absolutely, I'm all for it. So I would tell you that any MLA would love to say I'd love to pave every road and
Yes.
and have everything done tomorrow. But it is about priorities, and certainly, I think residents have voiced their concerns to me quite well, and I'll continue to do the best that I can to provide what's needed on my end.
Well, we'll certainly hope for the best there. Trevor, one of the reasons I'm interested in speaking to you at this point is because of an announcement made not all that long ago by the Minister of Community Services in your government, Carla McFarlane, who we also had on Telile 24/7 just a couple of weeks ago talking about this. A new funding package for communities across Nova Scotia, including one right in the Strait area for Port Hawkesbury, that will enable some temporary housing, including hotel rooms, for those who are struggling with homelessness at this time. That all ties into the overall conversation on affordable housing. I just wonder, can I get your reaction when you found out that Port Hawkesbury, where you used to be a town councillor, was on that list to receive that funding, and what you think of the program and that idea overall?
Look, it's no secret to anybody that housing has become a huge issue in Nova Scotia, and this hasn't just come about in the last week or month or year. This has been ongoing for a long time, and there's different spokes to this, right? It's we can talk about affordable housing, we can talk about homelessness, we can talk about supply of all housing, right? We've got an influx of interested people who want to come to this province and support, support initiatives to grow our province, but that was such a great initiative. A lot of talk about homelessness happens with respect to HRM. It's probably much more visible there with the tents and some of the ongoing challenges that they have. But we have homelessness here too, and maybe it's not that visible. But I can tell you there are people that are couch surfing. There are people who are sleeping and living in places that I wouldn't say are suitable. And so an announcement like this is a start. It provides some emergency relief. I think it shows even just before a budget is being released that community services and our minister really does care. It could have been waiting until the budget to do this type of thing, but this is a priority for her. And so we have Minister McFarlane is very dedicated to supporting the well-being of all of our vulnerable people, and I would say, she's got an advocate in me. So certainly we'll continue the dialogue, and I was very pleased when I heard that, and it will support people in Port Hawkesbury, but around the region as well. So I'm really happy for that.
And talking to Minister McFarlane, the sense I get is that she wants to find out more about the affordable housing and homelessness situation in Port Hawkesbury, in Richmond County, and around the Strait area. And certainly we know Port Hawkesbury and Richmond have put affordable housing at the top of their priority lists. Do you get the sense that there's a good two-way communication between the department here, but also between yourself and the municipalities in terms of this specific issue?
Well, I will tell you, it's Omicron probably allowed me to do a little bit more stakeholder engagement, not being in Halifax so much, and so I've been very fortunate to reach out to municipal partners, but even the Housing Matters Coalition. We had a meeting just this week talking about ideas about how we can position ourselves in Richmond in the Strait area to come up with creative ideas and different ways to look at housing and affordable housing. And it's going to take a team effort. This is, certainly our government wants to be part of that. And when we're ready, certainly Minister McFarlane knows that I'll be reaching out to have some discussions on some of the ideas that we're going to bring forward.
Well, we look forward to seeing how that conversation goes. As we're winding down here, Trevor, I want to talk a bit about Nova Scotia's approach to COVID-19 and to lifting restrictions at this stage of the pandemic. March 21st is coming up rapidly, and we're going to be seeing, if things stay on track, all remaining restrictions being lifted. Several of them were lifted just this past week on March the 7th. So, can you give me a sense of how you feel about how your government is tackling this and where we go from here in terms of being able to return to some sort of normalcy at this stage of the pandemic?
Yeah, what a couple of months we've had, or a couple of years really, in terms of dealing with COVID, and full credit to Dr. Strang and the previous Liberal government, and trying to keep our communities and our province safe, and creating kind of a system of how we were going to get through this. And we as Nova Scotians, we followed direction. We did what we were told. As a healthcare provider, 90% or greater than 90% double vaccinated is a huge success, regardless of how what you think about if we need 100% or not. But that's significant, and we've done what we've said we would do. Nova Scotians have stepped up, and so this is going to be an interesting time. We're trying to move into a live with COVID, or learn to move forward in a different way is very different than we have for the last 2 years. And I'm getting a sense of some anxiety from people who are nervous about lifting restrictions, and I'm getting lots of feedback from people who are so excited that we're lifting restrictions. And I think we have to, as Nova Scotians, continue to respect that we all are in a different place here. We all feel a little bit differently about this, and there are going to be some people who, and I would encourage this, some people who will continue wearing masks and social distancing and sanitizing and doing all the things that we've done over the last number of months. And there are going to be people who may not wear masks, and I think there's got to be a healthy respect about where people are in those positions, and all with the idea of making sure we take care of our most vulnerable, right? So all along, my perspective has been, it's always about taking care of our healthcare system. So our healthcare system, COVID didn't cause the problems, but COVID just showed us how sensitive our healthcare system is to something like this. And so we have to keep in mind that it's about protecting people. It's about making sure that our healthcare system can handle the stresses that come in with it. And so, as somebody who's been in healthcare for a number of years, that's where my mind goes with it. And so, I'm going to keep doing a few different precautions on my end, and doing what I can to protect my neighbors and my family. But at the same time, I'm looking forward to seeing how we can move to that next phase of living with COVID. So,
one last question on this topic, Trevor, and it's just shifting away from public health and taking care of making sure the disease doesn't spread to sector support from your government in terms of the business sector, the tourism sector, many others that have been impacted by the pandemic. I spoke not long ago to Ashley Taylor, the owner of Cutting Edge Boutique over in Port Hawkesbury, and she was talking about the difficulties that her industry has faced, even with recent support that has been announced by your government for the cosmetology industry. Doesn't necessarily take the salon sector in. Can you talk a little bit about how you feel that your government has done in terms of being able to take care of businesses that have struggled in these times, and what you could look at doing in the future for sectors that feel that they've been left on the sidelines?
yeah, it's no question that there's a number of sectors that have struggled through the last 2 years. My business was closed for the very first 3.5 months. And certainly I advocated at that time. There were gaps in the system federally and provincially, and I was an advocate then for making sure that some of those gaps could be filled. The provincial side of things has been, we've tried to make sure that we've supported sectors that were directly impacted, and by that I mean we've had to shut down some sectors. Some things had to be shut down during this latest wave. It's unfortunate some other sectors that weren't necessarily shut down were impacted because of maybe fear of people going to salons or going to the chiropractor or to a massage therapist. So some of them, and I've heard from those sectors, and certainly I've relayed my concerns to the Premier and to the Minister. And and I'll continue to be an advocate for businesses, and and it's about evaluating all of those those sectors, and our minister is dedicated and very, very thoughtful person, and really will continue to look at the data and look at how those sectors are impacted, and if there's an opportunity to support them in some way, I'm confident she'll look at all options. So I don't have any direct answers in terms of support, but certainly I'm looking forward to a time when we're all not talking about having to be propped up in our business, and all we're doing is celebrating the successes and the expansions of businesses in our region.
Hopefully we'll see those days sooner rather than later. We've covered a lot of ground in a short time, Trevor, as I expected we might. Did you want to add anything else about all of this just before we wrap up?
No, it's just it's been a great couple of months getting to get familiar with the roles and responsibilities of an MLA, and you're always wanting to do the best you can and put your best foot forward. And I've been very appreciative of how residents and community members in Richmond have reached out to me and been very gracious and informative, giving me really good data to be able to advocate and support our community. So I hope we continue to do that, and even while I'm in Halifax in the legislature over pretty much from March 24th, probably at the full month of April, we'll be quite busy in there, but I want people to know they can always reach out for sure.
Well, we appreciate you reaching out to us and giving us some time here, and we want to thank you once again for taking a couple of minutes. And on this busy afternoon, is there never not a busy afternoon for you? Let's put it like that. Trevor Boudreau, thank you for coming back to Telile 24/7 today.
Thank you so much, Adam. It was great.
Trevor Boudreau is the Progressive Conservative MLA for Richmond, and we've been speaking to him via Zoom. Stay tuned for more of Telile 24/7 in just a moment. Now, you may recall that during our conversation with Trevor Boudreau, we talked a little bit about a new provincial program that's designed to assist the homeless in communities like Port Hawkesbury. Well, homelessness has been top of mind for the Strait-Richmond Housing Matters Coalition for quite a while, and now they're hoping to be able to develop a new staff position to be able to help advance their agenda for affordable housing and helping the homeless in our area. They're looking for provincial and municipal funding to be able to get that position up and running. So here's Celeste Gautel speaking on behalf of the Strait-Richmond Housing Matters Coalition at the most recent Committee of the Whole meeting for Richmond Municipal Council.
Many housing needs in rural communities are very invisible. So we don't really know what's going on. We don't have a really good sense. We hear a lot, but we don't have a really good sense about what's happening. We have a term that's referred to as a hidden homeless, and we do have people in Richmond County that are considered to be living rough. That may surprise some people, but some of you may be very familiar that there have been constituents in Richmond County that have been sleeping outdoors, and there has been intervention to support those individuals in recent months. We also have people that are forced to couch surf because they don't have stable housing. And what that means is that people go from home to home. So they may be staying with friends, they overstay their welcome. They may be staying with a sister, they overstay their welcome, etc. This is especially true for some youth in our community because we don't have any housing or shelters that are available for youth. So if a youth is in a very difficult position at home, sometimes they find themselves staying with friends or what have you. One of the things that we've become increasingly aware of is that there is a huge need for seniors housing that is both affordable as well as accessible, and also a form of housing that is kind of more supportive or has an assistive element to it. One of the things that you would be familiar with is back in 2019, the Seniors Take Action Coalition actually undertook a senior survey, and almost 300 seniors from Richmond County and the Strait area participated to communicate their housing needs. We also have single women living in dangerous situations due to family violence and lack of housing options. We know that the high levels of child and family poverty contribute greatly to the need for affordable housing. And one of the things that was of deep concern to me was to find out that Richmond County placed 3 in the last child poverty report in terms of the incidence of poverty in the province. So they placed 3 out of about 20 communities. Public housing, as you all know, has a long waiting list, and despite vacancies, the housing programs don't always reach the people in greatest need. And what I mean by that is the only public housing that is available is for seniors and families. We have a lot of single individuals and people of other demographics that are also in need of core housing. Some of the gaps that we're aware of is the limited affordable housing for all demographics. And this has become increasingly significant in the last year or 2 years through COVID, where the price of housing has been gouged and people are selling housing. And so there's less and less on the rental market. We don't have any emergency housing for youth or men in our community. There is one women's shelter in Port Hawkesbury. There is no second stage housing for women who leave Leaside to move into on a temporary basis until they get kind of more established. We only have 127 seniors apartments through public housing and 67 in the Strait-Richmond area. We have very limited housing options to address seniors requiring different levels of care. We have nursing home, and that's it. So you're either in your home or in a nursing home or in a hospital. There's nothing that's transitional in nature that provides support that is needed. As you know, we have an aging population with only 3 local nursing homes with limited beds. And one of the most important gaps, and why I'm here tonight, is that there is no not-for-profit organization in Richmond County or in the town of Port Hawkesbury that has a mandate specifically to address housing from a broad perspective. And that has had a great impact because there have been a lot of opportunities that have come our way, and we have not been able to access or capitalize on them because we don't have a not-for-profit organization. But the internal optimist in me always looks at the opportunities. I mean, we're laden with all kinds of barriers and gaps, but there's lots of opportunities because there has been a renewed commitment by the federal government to invest in housing. I have been 7 years now working in the area, and I have never seen a time when the issue of housing has had more importance. There's also a very strong interest in working collaboratively in the region. And that has been evident by the cooperation of both the town of Port Hawkesbury and Richmond County in the coalition. For the first year and a half, it was co-chaired by myself and Brenda, and for the past year and a half, it's been co-chaired with Amanda. So to me, there's a strong interest in working together. There's also ways and opportunities to look at how we can integrate other components of an age-friendly community into housing. There have been discussions about engaging with the private sector, and we actually have members of the private sector that are on our coalition and bring an interesting perspective to the table. St. FX Extension has been providing some very strong leadership in the last year on the community housing sector. And they're going to be moving forward with a phase 2 of a project and are looking at the creation of a provincial body which would support rural communities and all communities around community housing. And when I say community housing, that's predominantly the not-for-profit sector housing. Cape Breton Partnership has been supporting research on housing. The province, as you probably are all aware, has just issued a request for proposal that has gone out, and they are going to be supporting municipalities with doing some housing market research. And recently, the coalition partnered with Cape Breton University and the Affordable Housing Association in Cape Breton to do a service-based count to start collecting some regional data. And the results of that will be available this spring. That service-based count is going to give us a better indication of people who are experiencing homelessness or who are in precarious housing situations. So why I'm here this evening is that we as an organization for several months and for the past year have been talking about the need for a regional not-for-profit housing entity. As I mentioned earlier, we're missing out on opportunities and we're not able to move forward on a number of key housing needs in our communities because we don't have such an organization. So while our coalition is a collection of people that are focused on, as I mentioned earlier, about issues around education, research, and advocacy, we don't have a mandate. We're not set up as a not-for-profit organization to work directly with developers or to pursue funding opportunities. An example that would be very familiar to you is the Walter Frugere School. And I have been following, as has the coalition, that very closely. And if there was a not-for-profit organization with a housing mandate that was in place in the community, they may be instrumental in being able to meet your particular goal of housing and health. So that just kind of demonstrates the need for this type of organization, and that would allow them to proactively look at generating opportunities for funding for both affordable and appropriate housing. Certainly, we would like a regional not-for-profit housing organization to have strong connections to the municipality because, as I remember Mayor Savage once said, the federal government has the money, the provincial government has the policy, but the municipal government has the problem. So while municipalities may not be in the business of providing housing, they certainly are in the business of providing housing. And I'm quite certain that every one of you receives a phone call a week about somebody that's experiencing a housing need. Another advantage of having a not-for-profit organization is that there would be dedicated staff with experience to work on housing development projects and to build the partnerships. Right now, all the work that's happening in housing in the Strait-Richmond area is being done off the side of our desk. People that have full-time jobs or are volunteers that are committed and passionate about this work, but we don't have the staff support to carry out this work. In other parts of the province, municipalities and the province have co-funded positions, and it's been very helpful in terms of moving the yardstick along. If we did have a not-for-profit organization like this one, we would be in a position to be able to apply for funding projects. And of course, we know that if we did that, the community is going to benefit. So what we're looking at is a joint effort between the town of Port Hawkesbury and Richmond County, because we've already established that we have very strong connections around the housing file with both municipal units, and that we would be able to leverage a better response, because if you combine the population of Richmond County and the town of Port Hawkesbury, and there's a lot of synergy between these two entities as well, it would also demonstrate that there's a partnership and a willingness to work with when we go to the provincial and federal government. If we could attract more resources, it would lead to more staff, and it would create all kinds of opportunity to stop the flow of people leaving the area, maybe help to attract more people to return to the area, look at all kinds of housing options that will support a whole range of people that with the greatest need. We'd like to, at this point in time, just ask that you open your door for future options to even find a way that you may participate in some way in creating the mandate for that organization. And because we're in March, also for the consideration of including funds in your budgetary process to possibly cost share a position. I'll be making the same ask to Port Hawkesbury when I meet with them on April 5th. And maybe if we could actually co-share a funded position with the province. We've already had kind of put a seed in Trevor's mind at a meeting last week about our interest in moving forward with this, and asked if he potentially might be able to support us in some startup costs associated with that, and then maybe look towards how the province can also help with some core funding. But I can tell you right now, unless we are committed to forming an organization like this, the train is going to continue to leave the station, and we're not going to be on it. We're missing opportunity upon opportunity. And unless we actually jointly start looking at trying to find some staff support on this work, we're not going to be able to move the yardstick very long. And the people in our communities are going to continue to have housing needs unmet.
Well, as we all know, it's been a strange winter here in Richmond County. Rainstorms and blizzards have gone hand in hand, sometimes just hours apart, and the temperature has soared up and zoomed down at the drop of a hat. So how can Richmond County and its Emergency Measures Department help people who are caught up in these kinds of storm conditions? To help answer that question, here's a recent dialogue that was held during Richmond's latest regular council meeting, followed up by commentary from Claire Doyle of the Seniors Take Action Committee that took place near the end of the Richmond Committee of the Whole meeting that was held early last week. Let's take a look at the storm issue and the storm response issue for Richmond right now.
When it came down to storm reporting, though, I thought, so Cecil Frost, our EMC, I thought he had some really great insight there. You know, I think we had a really productive conversation around making sure that we're capturing information, but we're not, you know, trying to distract staff from dealing with an emergency situation. Like, so what we really talked about was a kind of post-event strategy. So not during an emergency, but after an emergency. Mr. Frost had suggested that we could potentially add a form to either the plan or bylaw or bylaw 50 or both that would capture some key data. So things like the agencies that are involved in the response, the number of people accessing shelters if we have to open them, the times that they were open and closed, and if it required backup power. Also the use of internal resources and maybe some other issues that might come to mind as the form was being developed, or just kind of a general area to capture unusual things. You know, and a great example that Mr. Frost provided was he talked about the recent opening of the comfort center in St. George's Channel area, Deputy Warden, right? And the fact that, as a municipally designated comfort center, you know, he had to go and check out the premise. And, you know, I think they had, you know, I'm not sure if they needed to call in snow clearing folks or, you know, like from our public works department, and, you know, just to make sure that there were safety concerns that were addressed on entering and exiting. But those are the kinds of considerations that need to be taken into account. And I think, I think he noted on that day, nobody actually used the center because, so, you know, a lot of people in that region do have backup power generators, but the power had been out for a very long time. And so, still kind of worth opening so that we have that, but I think starting to understand better what the usage is and what are some of the issues around it, so that we can do some better tracking. Really, I think the discussion was, we really wanted to put an emphasis on, let's keep it short, gather only the information that's absolutely necessary. We're not collecting data for the sake of collecting data, but just whatever we would need to kind of be able to identify areas for improvement, and also trends. I don't think our storm reporting is going to get less. It's going to get a whole lot more as our climate continues to evolve. And so I guess I wanted to just kind of open that for discussion from councillors to see if you'd be open to, potentially referring that to pilot policy and bylaw to create that kind of a form as an attachment to either the bylaw or the plan. I think also, we may want to convene a meeting of the Municipal Emergency Management Advisory Committee committee group, because, in discussing the plan with him, we kind of did identify some areas where maybe there needs to be some updating. So time to kind of address that.
Would it make more sense to maybe go through the Emergency Measures Committee kind of thing and probably propose something to bring back to council at a later date?
I think you're right on. I think probably it would need to go through emergency measures first, or emergency management first. I'm not sure procedurally if we would need to take it to policy and bylaw. If we can suggest a bylaw change outside of, that would come direct from that committee to council, I think we could, but I'd look to staff, I guess, to provide some clarification on that procedure. So that's a great point, Councillor.
I think, I don't know, maybe we want to even look to our, our neighboring Budletech. They have an emergency measures coordinator there as well. So it might be something, if we're going to put in place, we may want to incorporate, I guess, all of Richmond County, and again, maybe see what their process is and how they do it. I do know, I can say, or I could be wrong, but I thought, and maybe our CAO can correct me, but I thought we had generators available for all the, I'm going to say halls. Is that still something that we have? I know several years back, we used to have generators and that kind of and I know it's just a small scope of it, but one of the things I ran into 2 weeks ago was I was out at one of the halls and the power went out, and that was one of the topics was, how did they get a hold of our emergency measures guy, and then he has to then try and take the generator from Boozdale or wherever they're stored out to, I guess, Little Lance or Pitagaraw or Arishat, or again, I don't know, maybe our CEO can answer that question. Are they still available? Are there still generators available for all these halls? I know at one point there was a bunch that were purchased.
There is an actual list of comfort centers, and to my knowledge, there is a list indicating which ones have generators. Now, the generators in most cases are at the facilities themselves, unless there are facilities that don't have the ability to house a generator. And in that instance, they would be housed at another location. I believe that's the case. That may be the case in St. Peter's for one of the comfort centers in that region. But for the most part, the generators are on location. So I don't know which facility you're referring to, and perhaps they're not a comfort center. So in that case, I don't know if they would have received a generator from the county.
No, in Lordways, the fire department, I believe, is listed as a comfort center. They have a generator there it's not a piece of equipment from the fire department. It's a county-owned generator.
Is that something we can get a list of?
Sure, yeah.
I do know that the Almadam Volunteer Fire Department had made some drastic changes with, wheelchair accessible showers and full kitchen, and they were looking to apply for that to become a comfort center. So again, maybe it made it through, maybe it didn't. I'm not sure, but if we could get an updated list, that would be great.
Okay, so essentially, I think what we would need to do with this, I did just check in with Yvonne about kind of process for this bylaw to be shifted. First of all, I will say it's quite a lengthy process because it requires ministerial approval, this particular bylaw, even with the addition of something just as simple as something as a storm reporting form. It may be something we can just add to the emergency plan, but it would have to go through policy and bylaw before it would come to council. However, I think maybe the discussion could start with the emergency management committee as kind of the route to get into bylaw and policies.
Only a week after storm data collection became an issue at Richmond County's latest regular monthly meeting, Council's Committee of the Whole also saw the same issue resurface. But this time it was a member of the public gallery, Claire Doyle of the Seniors Take Action Coalition, who was wondering how the municipality planned to deal with storm issues, but also deal with lingering questions left over from the county's most recent emergency management strategy.
When was the last time the municipal emergency measures bylaws of 2015 were reviewed and updated?
Okay, so that I can answer for you, Claire. The last time was just before Christmas, so it would have been end of 2021. We went through and made several updates, a whole list of them. And those changes were suggested by the province, so that would have been the last time those were made. I think your next question was hiring the emergency management coordinator. I wasn't sure if you were asking if so the position does still exist. We're hiring.
Yeah, well, according to what I read, there had been 2 part-time coordinators. One was Cecil Frost, and there was a second one in the St. Peter's area. That's what it says in the bylaws on page 51. But that might not exist now. I'm not sure, but I just wanted to ask. You have 1 part-time coordinator at present?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Did you ever?
And I mean, please, CAO Marchand, feel free to jump in if you have additional details on that. But my understanding is we have 1 part-time position that we have for that role.
Did you have 2 at some point in time? 2 part-time positions?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. We had a part-time position, 2 part-time positions, and that would have been likely around 2018 when we stopped that.
Okay.
2017. I'm not 100% sure on the dates, but I can check that later.
So that was my question. If you had 2 part-time positions in the past, and now you're hiring a, a casual as opposed to a full-time position. So that was my question.
Yeah, those
Yes.
I just wanted.
Yeah, and those 2 casual positions back in 2017 or so were also part-time as well. They were not full-time positions then either.
A 2 part-times equals a full-time, right? So,
Not necessarily.
no?
I don't know if they were both at 50%. Like I'd have to go back and check on that. I don't know, Don, if you would know that right offhand.
Yeah, I can confirm they were not full-time positions.
Well, so then item number 3, then how confident is the council that the present emergency measures plan that you've got in place now meets the security needs of residents, especially our most vulnerable?
Yeah. So I'll start by answering that, and I'll invite any other councillors to jump in. So, I'll be honest with you, Claire, I'm not feeling 100% confident. I don't know if that's a measure that even exists in the world of emergency preparedness, but I feel like we could be doing more. And I think that's why you saw, council had requested to, that I meet with the CAO and our emergency management coordinator, Cecil Frost, to talk about storm impacts and storm reporting. And so we did just meet recently, I guess would have been last month. We are going to start to report, on storms. That's going to require probably another amendment to that bylaw. But what Cecil had suggested was we should be collecting information like when do the comfort stations, when are they being activated? How many people are using them? Are there any other services that we need to pull from the county? So we're really, I think, wanting to get a better handle on what that looks like when our storm responses, because I think you made a great point. Our weather is getting more volatile. It's not necessarily calming down, right? And so it's a huge concern for me. We're an extremely coastal community, both along the Verdora Lake and along the ocean side. So I feel like there's work to be done. I think we're getting started on that. But yeah, no, it's a great point, and I'd even suggest that it's an urgent one.
Join us next week on Telile 24/7. We'll have an interview with Yarmouth MLA and Nova Scotia Liberal leadership candidate Zach Churchill. But in the meantime, here is a couple of final thoughts on the Liberal leadership race from Northside-Westmount MLA Fred Tilley. A recent guest on Telile's Roundtable series, Tilley originally planned to enter the Liberal leadership race, but instead ended his campaign and threw his support behind Preston MLA Angela Simmons, who we featured on last week's edition of Telile 24/7. So I thought I'd take the opportunity to ask Fred Tilley why he chose this course of action for the Nova Scotia Liberal leadership.
In my view, the party needs some new ideas, new vibrant leadership, some experience outside, life experience outside of the legislature, lots of leadership experience is what we need right now. So I felt that my experience and my history sort of fit that bill fairly well. So which is why I originally had taken a look at to throw my name in the ring. So there's a lot that goes into a leadership contest, of course, and number one is around the financial side. And for me, the financial commitment, while we could have raised enough to get into the race, there's no question about that. The financial piece was a little bit daunting with the way that the party has set things up with the taking a large chunk of the donations off the top of the candidates. So I really didn't agree with that. And so looking further into myself and Angela, we have a lot in common. So we both really are progressive people. We have progressive ideas. We share a lot of the same renewal ideas for the party that we're looking for. We've had lots of great conversations. And so when I had originally started to think that, maybe now is not the right time for me, I very, very easily put my support behind Angela. She's a great leader. She's got a great background, a ton of experience outside the legislature, and is gaining great experience inside the legislature as deputy speaker. So for me, to put my support behind Angela just is a sense of renewal. And it's a sense that, I like where she wants to take the party. So that was why I decided to jump on Team Simmons.
We're, of course, coming into the combined annual general meeting for both the provincial and federal Liberal Party. There's a lot of soul searching happening. A report released not all that long ago in terms of the election results from last summer. But the flip side of it is that you're one of a handful of new MLAs that were elected during that process. So your thoughts coming into this period for the Liberal Party, and also looking ahead to what the Liberal Party can offer in the legislature as the session gets underway.
Well, yeah. So I think I think it's very common and normal anytime there's a significant election loss by a party that it's time to look internally, take a look at what went wrong, what went right, and try and chart a path forward. And the report that Senator Cowan and Maura Ryan put together, I think they did a wonderful job of laying out what needs to be done by the party in order to become relevant to Nova Scotians again. And for me, it's there for us to follow that path and take the party down that direction. With regards to the session coming up, I think there's going to be, we have a lot of we've been looking at a new budget from a first budget from the PC party. So we'll be very interested to see where some of the investments are going to play. As official opposition, it's our job to hold the government account to promises made during an election and in the mandate letters of the ministers. So of course we'll be preparing for that and looking forward to that and asking the tough questions. But at the end of the day, it's really all about Nova Scotians, and it's what's best for Nova Scotians. So working together with our colleagues from the Progressive Conservative Party, the New Democratic Party, working together to make sure that Nova Scotians are getting the best governance that they can get. And I think when you have a strong opposition, I think that really helps to make sure that we're all on the same path. And at the end of the day, we carry different banners, but at the end of the day, the Nova Scotia is what's important to all of us. So I think it's going to be great to get back to the legislature with our colleagues and hopefully pass some great legislation and take Nova Scotia to the next level.
And there you have it. That wraps up this week's edition of Telile 24/7. Thank you for tuning in, and a big thank you to my interview guests this week, Fred Tilley and Trevor Boudreau. And special thanks to Nick Boudreau and Becky Bourinot for their assistance here at the Telile studios. If you have any comments or thoughts about what you've seen over the past hour, or just some suggestions for future editions of Telile 24/7, I'd love to hear from you. You can contact me directly. My phone number is 902-625-8863, and you can reach me by email using the address adamjrcook, cook with an E, @gmail.com. You can also contact Telile Community Television directly with your comments and suggestions. The station phone number in Arishat is 902-226-1928, and you can also use the email address telile@telile.tv. Don't forget to follow Telile on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And the Telile YouTube channel features every single episode of Telile 24/7, including this one, as well as our sister programs Roundtable and Notre Côté. For now, I'm Adam Cook. Thanks once again for tuning in to Telile 24/7. I look forward to seeing you again next week with a brand new show. Bye for now.